This is Dean Odell. He had a debate with Greg Locke, on Flat Earth and whether or not it's true. The reason they're talking about this is because there's a serious Flat Earth movement in the Christian world right now. Christians are turning toward these Bible verses that they claim supports a Flat Earth cosmology. And we can see the numbers ticking up in Google Trends, for example. I mean, just look at these numbers. Red is Greg Locke. Blue is Flat Earth theology. Well, it's just Flat Earth. It's people who Googled the words Flat Earth. So January 2016, it got a massive jump. November 2017, another massive jump. And now it's on an uptick again. That's why Greg Locke is even talking about this. Well, we're about to listen to it. This is not part one. If you didn't see the others, don't sweat it. This stands independently of the rest. I'll give context if it's missing. But he believes that the Bible is literal all the way through. There is no metaphor to be found. So when it says God rests his feet on the earth as his footstool, that's literal. When it says you're going to be born again, that's literal. So let's give this a listen, see what they have to say for themselves. And while we watch, we're going to play some Super Metroid. If you never played it before, it shouldn't bother you too much. It'll be in the background.
Just so you know you can't trust them. Here we go. I'll play it.
Finally, the element that seals their fate. Of all the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period, one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary.
So, yeah, this is being framed up as like a legitimate documentary. I don't know who did it, but it's complete nonsense. It's not a legitimate documentary at all. It's a flat earther nutcase documentary, quote unquote.
An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr., and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture.
Again, like I said, these people are willing to lie to further their goals, their interests, and their beliefs. Don't believe a word out of their mouth without independently verifying that this is true.
Depicting the Earth at a distance in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th, and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be Again, the illusion they are...
I'm wondering why it got cut off there. That's weird, right?
Attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Understand...
Check it out. This is a YouTube video, apparently, because it's got a little subscribe watermark in the bottom right corner. See? Interesting. They found this on YouTube, huh?
That only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private until now. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Okay, again, don't believe a word out of their mouths. I have no idea what they're even talking about here. I'm not really a flat earth debunker, although I find it fascinating. I'm more of a religious debunker, and he does get to the religious stuff in a minute. Just bear in mind that this is almost, like, all of this is complete nonsense and very possibly faked, entirely faked.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we're seeing. Thank you very much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out...
Like, why are they even saying this on radio transmissions in the first place if this is fake? I don't understand. If this is fake, wouldn't they just be, like, standing in the same room together or something? Why would this be a discussion that was had on film?
Sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in from the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through a the number one window under it, any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon,
The federal government is out to lie to you.
it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows.
She's saying this with such confidence. It's crazy.
Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top.
Right. I'm not seeing what she's seeing. She's claiming that they covered part of the window with their sleeve. Well, if they're covering a window with their sleeve, then isn't there an Earth outside there? They're still looking at a planet.
Together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18th, 1969.
July 20th, 1969 is when the moon landing officially happened. Oh yeah, I'm not supposed to be wall jumping. I'm supposed to be doing a speed boost. I know that because my birthday is July 20th, 1989. So George H.W. Bush, the older Bush, came out on the day that I was born and, did a tribute to the moon landing and said, 20 years ago, blah, 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 20th anniversary.
Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon.
Wait, is that halfway to the moon? How many miles from Earth is the moon? 238,900. Wow. Okay, so he's saying that's rough, almost halfway to the moon. Sure. All right.
The NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
So I guess they're saying that they went to space, but it was only low Earth orbit? Am I picking this up correctly?
Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here, during another segment, also intended to air after review, Neil Armstrong falsely explains to the viewers how the shot is attained by putting the camera's lens to the window's glass, as it would have to be if they were the claimed distance away from the Earth.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's...
He didn't say it was completely filled up. He said it was filled up. I mean, I know it's a small thing, but every distinction here matters when you're dealing with people like flat earthers. They will lie and twist things around till the cows come home.
Would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as...
I don't know that, it doesn't mean that the camera is literally right up against the window. There are a billion holes in this, just taking what they're saying at face value, and I don't even have a reason to do that.
It obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just beyond the Terminator or inside.
Seriously, there are a billion reasons why this imagery could happen if this is even real. They're acting like this is some gotcha moment, wow, we just proved that this is all fake.
Shadow.
You can also notice how the astronaut operating the camera reacted to the mistake by attempting to pan away from it.
All right, I'm going to end that. You
Okay, that just sounded like complete nonsense to me, but all right.
I see. We can't. This is why we can't trust their picture. But I'm going to go on. I want to go through all this. I could go through all the fakery. They were using fisheye lenses, and
Yeah, the fisheye lenses are wide-angle shots, but fisheye lens has not always been used in every single circumstance, especially since flat earthers came out and started claiming a bunch of stupid stuff.
all the way in the 60s. I need to get to the Bible stuff.
Yeah. Isn't that why you're here?
I can give you this proof all day long right here, what things really are.
Dude, I wish that he didn't have, like, way louder clips that he keeps playing little parts of, because it wreaks merry hell on my editing.
High altitude balloons, that's what satellites are. We're going to go down through all of this stuff.
Like that. Why? You trying to blow out my eardrums, bro?
I'm going to go. That's what they say is out there. You never see those satellites and debris out there, though, in the ISS flyover feeds.
That's because they're really, really tiny. All this debris is really small. Seriously, like, there are so many basic, straightforward, simple explanations for the complaints and questions that this dude has, and he's using them as some gotcha, like he won the debate because of this. It's insane.
But here we go. Let's get to this.
Please.
Y'all see I had a lot of slides. There's long-distance photography of Chicago, 60 miles. You shouldn't be able to see any of it. All right. I can't do it all. I'm getting to the Bible because I know we're out of time. All of this stuff's on my website, folks. The sevenfold Doctrine of Creation series. This is our own test. I can show you. We saw spool.
My controller, it keeps disconnecting from the Switch, and I'm just, like, all over the place. I cannot, for the life of me, get through this room.
Sitting on the dock at 11 miles away. That's my film right there at 11 miles away.
Like, I don't even know if this is true. I don't know if this is really his film. He's willing to lie for Jesus, whatever it takes to bring people to him, even if that means deceiving people.
Spool sitting on the dock. This Earth's not curved. I can tell you that right now. You can go with us and we can show you. See, let me zoom out.
Your mother's curved.
At 11 miles, there should be a 7-story building bulge blocking my view of what's sitting on the dock in the Alabama state docks there. Let's keep going. I've done shots.
I think somebody just yelled, "Go back," in the background.
Cars going across bridges at 13, 14 miles away. We know the height of them and everything. So we've done our own experiments. And we've had PhDs in physics. We've had engineers.
If a PhD in physics is backing this position up, if their job depends on the knowledge that they have as a PhD, they should be fired. And they should have their PhD stripped from them. You know what? Don't fire them. Have their PhD stripped from them. Obviously, they didn't learn anything while they were in their PhD program. And after they have their PhD stripped, then they'd probably be fired for not being qualified for the position.
Years we've had Army officers. Just let you see, I'm going through them quick here. I'm going to get.
I mean, I don't know the context of any of these images because he's just zipping through. So this is just all complete nonsense to me.
To the Bible stuff. I had 244 slides, y'all.
That's way too many slides.
Scientists prove that Kansas is flatter than a pancake, all the way across.
I don't know why he thinks that proves his position.
All right, let's go here. We're to the Bible. Let me do this. All right, so we go back to the Genesis. I'm going to go through the Bible as quickly as I can on this stuff. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night.
This is actually an interesting verse right here, 1 to 5, these verses, because first of all, this is origin literature. It's more campfire stories than literal biblical narrative. Like it's telling a real fact. It's not like that. In addition to that, these verses that we've got here, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. The original language, according to Bart Ehrman, biblical expert and scholar, the original language says that before God, the earth existed. It was a big ball of water without any islands or continents yet. But, you know, that changed over the years to imply that, like, God created all of it at the same time.
Evening and the morning were the first day. Now, I want you to notice something. He uses the term here, first of all, the waters. One thing we know about water, it always finds its level. We use levels to build buildings and to keep them level. And the term face is a geometry term. It's a math term. And to use the term face of the earth and face of the waters is used multiple times, many times in the Bible. And what does a face mean? An individual flat surface of a solid object.
All right. Fascinating, right? This argument here? Complete BS, obviously, but the word face can also mean the front of something. I have a face, and my face is not the front of like a solid flat surface. The Bible is obviously using the word face in a context other than the surface of a flat object. It was using it like metaphorically, the metaphorical face of it, like the top of it, is basically what it was saying. But remember, this guy doesn't believe that the Bible ever uses metaphor, ever. The Bible is 100% true and literal from beginning to end, in his mind.
But even if you want to argue that, I can tell you that you go out and you see like a pond or a lake and you see this perfect reflection upon it. That perfect reflection, that mirror reflection that you're seeing cannot happen on a curved surface, only on a flat one.
What are you talking about? You can't get a reflection on a curved surface? What? Also, for all intents and purposes, that pond is not curved. The curvature of the earth is way, way too broad and vast to affect a little pond. And also, ponds are level. They lay flat, basically.
Let's keep going here. Here's the key, though. Here's what most ministers and even so-called creation ministries get wrong is this issue is what is the firmament? What does the Bible teach about it? God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And
so I looked into this in one of the other parts. So I'm not going to go over it again completely, but give you a little bit of context for what he's talking about here. The early verses in Genesis, the book of Genesis is really made up of 17 different books that were written at different times by different people for different purposes, basically. And this verse in Genesis specifically right here talks about a firmament. The firmament is in their mind was a separation between heaven and earth, i.e. space, basically, right? To my knowledge, they believed at the time that Genesis was written that heaven was above them, and then firmament, which is just an impenetrable barrier, I suppose. So heaven, firmament, earth, and then firmament again. They believed that there was a firmament under earth as well. And in the Noah's flood story, the Bible espouses the idea that water came from both firmaments, the one above and the one below. So water came from underground and from the sky. Kent Hovind and other young earth creationists, biblical literalists, believe that the firmament was an ice wall or an ice sheet in space or whatever. And this ice sheet was kind of moving toward Earth and started to come into the atmosphere and melted as it came in. This is called canopy theory. It melted as it came in and started pouring rain down. Kent Hovind, pretty sure he believes this one. I don't remember 100%, so don't quote me on this as being one of Kent Hovind's beliefs, but I'm pretty confident he believes that The firmament, being like the ice sheet that was above the planet, that encased the planet, was completely sealed before, like, Noah's day. And that caused, like, an oxygen-rich environment. And he thinks that this oxygen-rich environment created the environment possible to have, like, really, really massive creatures, like gigantic bugs and stuff. I've also heard Ken Tovand, famed young Earth creationist, say that reptiles never stop growing, literally ever. They are always, always, always growing till the day that they die, which is a little bit true, I suppose. I mean, technically, we are always regenerating cells and stuff, right? But they slow down dramatically, like lizards and stuff do. After they hit a certain barrier, like after they get to a certain size, they slow down to a point that it's basically undetectable how much they're growing. Ken Tovand says, in an oxygen-rich environment, with lizards that never stop growing and live forever because nothing died before Adam and Eve sinned, you get dinosaurs. That's where dinosaurs came from in his mind. And they existed 6,000 years ago. It's insane. So anyway, get a little context on the firmament.
Divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And God called the firmament heaven. I'm going to break this down as fast as I can for you. He talks about the open firmament of heaven, our atmosphere where the birds fly. The Bible teaches that the firmament that he's talking about here that he calls heaven is a solid crystalline structure that supports waters above it. That is called heaven. And then there is...
Wait, solid crystalline structure? I don't remember hearing about that. What's he talking about? I'm not seeing anything about solid crystalline structure here. Maybe it's a different verse that I don't know. But it sounds like he's just making this up. He's inserting it.
Solid crystalline structure that supports waters above it. That is called heaven. And then there is the third heaven where the throne of God is. All right, that's your three heavens, not some outer space, not some expanse. In fact, the most disingenuous and the most dishonest definition of this word is to call it some empty expanse. That is not how it's defined. That is not how Moses and Joshua and everyone believed what it was. Even
so, the early people in the Bible, the characters that we don't even know were real, Moses wasn't real. He wasn't. I don't know if Joshua was real. I don't know what role he played. Noah was not real. Adam and Eve were not real. Adam and Eve were metaphors, actually. Like the word Adam, also pronounced Adam, in the language that this was written in, literally means soil, land, earth, I believe. Let me just double check that to be sure. Yeah, means soil or earth. So the fact that Adam was named Adam in the first place kind of gives you a gigantic hint that this story was not literal, was not written to be literal. It was a gigantic metaphor, a huge allegory. Even like the Bible writers very obviously viewed the story of Adam and Eve as like an allegory. And it's just like, it's absurd to me that people actually buy this as like real and literal. With such a gigantic red flag as the guy's name being Adam. Soil. As his name being soil.
Josephus, I want to show you that. We got to let the Bible interpret the Bible. When we talk about what is the firmament, right? We know that God said here, Genesis 1:6-7, about the firmament divided the waters from the waters. The flood happened here, and it says that there were three things in 600 year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day where all the fountains of the great deep were broken up. That's one. And the windows of heaven were open. That's two. And God remembered Noah, and this was at the end of the flood, and all the cattle that was with him. And God made wind to pass over the earth, and the waters were assuaged for the fountains of the great deep. And
I think the word is assuaged, but okay.
Windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain. So you had the fountains of the deep, the windows of heaven, which opened to let that water in that was from above, and then you also had rain. Anybody that says it was just rain is not being honest with the scriptures. It's that fact. We had three sources of water at the flood.
I don't know if people in the Old or the New Testament believed that the books of Genesis like collectively. I don't know if they believed that they were literal or not, but I do know that the people who wrote it didn't believe that it was literal. When you name a character Soil, the way that Adam was named Soil, it's obvious that people didn't view it as literal. It couldn't be more obvious, honestly.
What Christians believed for many years was a thing called the canopy theory. Dr. Karl Baugh taught it and others taught it, where they said,
Yeah, I think Kent Hovind has walked away from canopy theory recently. I'm not sure.
that the firmament was a vapor canopy that was around the earth that condensed and then flooded the earth, and thus doing away with the firmament. The problem with that is the Bible proves that wrong, that the firmament collapsed as a canopy, because 1,350 years after the flood, the Holy Spirit moved on David to say, "Praise him, ye heavens, and ye waters that be above the heaven. Let them praise his name, or praise the name of the Lord, for he commanded, and they were created. He hath established them forever and ever. He hath made a decree which shall not pass." So anybody that says that the firmament or this was condensed vapor canopy that disappeared is not true.
Yeah, like I said, canopy theory is kind of not very reputable anymore, but a lot of people built theology off of canopy theory after the fact.
We have 1,350 years later, he's telling us the waters are still above the heavens. The Hebrew word for firmament is the Hebrew word rakia.
Don't believe anything about the language that he uses here, or any of his language or linguistic tricks, because you've seen how dishonest the guy is up to this point. He's just as dishonest with everything else, I'm sure. I don't know ancient Hebrew, but I know this guy lies for a living, so. Actually, just out of curiosity, let's see. What did he say? Firmament. So, Genesis 1. Let's just look up Genesis 1, and I'm going to use the NRSV version. Where's firmament in here? I'm not seeing the word firmament. Wait. NRSV doesn't have the word firmament in it. What word is he using? Or what translation is he using? Is he using the AMP version? Amplified Bible? Genesis 1:6 appears to have reference to it. And God said, "Let there be an expanse of the sky in the midst of the waters. Let it separate the waters below the expanse from the waters above the expanse." I see. So he tried to debunk the idea that the word firmament meant anything other than like giant dome. He's translating out things that he views as errors and translating in his interpretation. That's what he's doing. NRSV is about as reliable as you get as far as Bibles go. It is the chosen Bible of scholars. And the word used there is, here's verse 6. "And God said, let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome." Oh, fascinating. He's saying dome here. Okay. "And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening and there was morning the second day." Let's look at an interlinear version. So interlinear shows us the original words used in that section. Of course, it really depends on like which manuscript you're using, of course, but these are, the interlinear Bible uses the same manuscripts that are commonly accepted as the definitive manuscripts used for the Bible. And it uses the original words, so we can look at the original language. It was Genesis 1:6. "Divide and let it of the waters in the midst a firmament, let there be God and said," and the waters between. What is this word? Rakia, as he said. Yeah, Raka, apparently. All right. Here are a few other examples of the exact same word, Raka, being used in other areas of the Bible. We have to look at context because the words are not perfect translations, and there's a lot of baggage attached to certain words that isn't necessarily attached in the original language, right? We have a clear, distinct idea of what a firmament is in our head because he's talking to us about a firmament and claiming that a firmament exists and was mentioned in the Bible, and he thinks the firmament is the dome that God rests his feet on, basically. So let's look at other contexts. Other contexts are, let there be an expanse in the midst. Let there be a firmament or an expanse or a dome in the NRSV. Those seem to be the only instances of its use, and that's in Genesis 1:6 and Ezekiel 1:22. That the head's creature an expanse gleam of crystal. I mean, I can see somebody viewing spaces like crystal, right? Because of the stars shining and everything. And the likeness of the firmament upon the heads. King James translates it as firmament. But all of the rest translate it as dome or expanse or a variety of other things. Let's see, New Living Version, I believe is what this is. Yeah, New Life Version. New Life Version uses the word an open space. Let me go to airmanblog.org out of curiosity. I was looking through your thoughts on cosmology, Platinum Post from Charles Hawkins. We read that yesterday. It's kind of hard to figure out like what the actual word meant. I guess that word could have a variety of meanings. Dome, firmament, open expanse, just plain expanse, open space. Could mean a number of things, as far as I can tell. But anyway, just be skeptical of everything he says is the point.
The Hebrew word rakia, it has a root word. Almost all Hebrew words have a three-letter root word. So you have...
Oh, no, he's using root words.
Rakia is the word for firmament, and the root word is raka. All right? Here's the definition of these words according to not only what the Hebrew meant, but also what they believed. So we have to see how God uses it. But firmament rakia does not mean an empty expanse. Anybody who tells you that the firmament or rakia means empty expanse, like Dr. Danny Faulkner of Answers in Genesis, he will say it's an empty expanse, that the firmament is that.
Oh, yeah, Answers in Genesis has addressed the flat earth theology because they're Bible literalists too. But apparently that's one step too far for both Answers in Genesis and Greg Locke. That just blows my mind.
Outer space. He is not being true to the definition of the Hebrew word. Literally, it says that it's an expansion of plates, broad plates beaten out. So it's literally, the word means taking something that's solid.
Well, I mean, he's taking another word. He's taking the root word and defining that. This isn't what the actual word means.
And beating it into a shape. Okay? That's the definition of the word. The verb raka acquires the sense of beating out precious metals, spreading that out, and results to spread over, to overlay. All right?
Ah, I see. So just taking what he's saying here at face value, if it's even true, he's saying that the original use of the word was commonly used to depict something being spread out, expanded out, drawn out, right? Open space probably isn't a fair word to use, but expanding is a fair word to use, seems to me. So I would say expanse is 100% fair, right?
He goes on here. Of course, this is the Brown Driver Briggs. It says extended surface, solid, expanse as beaten out. Not an empty expanse, but expanding something that's solid over something. That's...
Okay, so he's arguing that the word means expanse, but it doesn't mean empty expanse?
The picture of this word. And the Hebrews, the ancient Israelites, believed that it was solid. The firmament was a solid structure and called it the vault of heaven. So here's your definition. The vault of heaven or firmament regarded by the Hebrews as solid and supporting the waters above. This is what all of the ancient Jews believed because they believed the Bible.
Okay, I don't think that they believed that Genesis was literal, that all of it was literal, considering the fact that Adam's name was soil. That's literally what his name meant. So I won't give him that. I think that ancient Jews recognized the metaphor in the old verses. That being said, 3,000 years ago, people had no real understanding of anything about how the earth worked or whatever. As time went on, as technology improved, we gained more and more knowledge and information and everything else, and we figured this stuff out. And I think all the way up to Jesus' day, they recognized that the earth was not flat. They recognized a round earth, I think. It's hard to know exactly. I think the 1500s, it was completely proven true. In Jesus' day, the idea was floating around all the way back in, I think, 100 BCE, 100 years before Jesus. The idea was floating around. There were a lot of different cosmological ideas, and none of them were espoused in the Bible at all, at least not literally. Like the book of Genesis, it was a gigantic book of metaphors. It was origin literature. It wasn't real. So anyways, I have to assume that these people believed what the vast majority of people believed in the area at the time. And that is, they probably believed in a round earth, in Jesus' day at least. I don't know about ancient Jews, but I do find it interesting that he didn't say ancient Christians, right?
Amen? They believed it about the firmament. Here is another lexicon. Jacinius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon defines rakia like this. The firmament of heaven spread out like a hemisphere above the earth, like a splendid, pellucid, translucently clear, transparent, crystalline, glassy, allowing the maximum passage of light as glass, sapphire, stone, to which the stars were supposed to be fixed.
The Jacinius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon. What the hell is this to the Old Testament? When was this written, and why does it look old as sin? Why should I be looking at this rather than modern scholarship on the subject? This was modern scholarship of its day. Why wouldn't we be looking at even more accurate scholarship? This dude blows me away with the level of mental gymnastics he's willing to take part in to believe his positions at any cost. It's crazy.
And over which the Hebrews believed that there was a heavenly ocean. Now, this is another lexicon defining it as they believed it, as the Bible spells it out, not as new Copernican Christians want to believe it is to be. Now, let's keep going. It says, additionally, Hebrew scholars believe, again, when they translated, in 250 BC, they translated the Hebrew Old Testament into, from Hebrew to Greek. That was called the Septuagint version, around 250 BC.
That's true.
When they translated the word firmament, they used the word stereoma. All right?
I don't know if that's true.
And when they use the word stereoma, that is known word. Thayer's Greek lexicon defines stereoma, that which has been made firm, the firmament, the arch of the sky, which in early times was thought to be solid, a fortified place.
Okay, you know what this reminds me of, honestly? What he's doing right now? This is a perfect analogy for what's happening. Seriously. Jehovah's Witnesses are convinced that Jesus died on a stake rather than a cross. Why are they convinced of that? Because the word used in the Bible is stauros, which is, it really means like something buried into the ground. But in some contexts, it could mean a pole. Jehovah's Witnesses are taking that extremely literally and assuming that when it says, like, pole buried in the ground, that automatically disqualifies a cross from being the thing that he died on. It's like, you know what? There's an argument here, okay? We don't know one way or another, so let's figure this out. What was the common method of execution back in Jesus' day? What did the Romans do to people that were criminals, like to the level that they believed Jesus was? They strung these criminals up on a cross, not a pole, not a stake, a cross. They strung them up on a cross and didn't take them down after they died. They would leave them up there. You know why? Part of the culture was that it was a huge disgrace to you to not get a proper burial. It was destroying your honor and your family's honor and everything, and you were damned to wander the world as a ghost, blah, 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 you know. More than likely, if Jesus were real, he probably got poked in the side with that spear, if you remember, to make sure that he was dead, and then was left up there so that the birds could eat him. the ultimate dishonor to any criminal. He probably wasn't put in a tomb. After he was completely dead and stayed up there for a couple weeks, they probably took his body out, or took his body down and put it in a ditch with the rest of the bodies they did this to. That's almost certainly what happened if Jesus were real. And this is the exact kind of nonsensical, ridiculous grasping at straws that Jehovah's Witnesses do and that Dean Odell does alike. They're both doing the same thing. He's desperate to find a way to turn this word, which means expanse apparently, into meaning a glass crystalline dome that fits over the earth that God rests his feet on. The individual words might mean dome or even firmament, but it doesn't mean that they believed that the earth is flat and that, like, God was up there resting his feet on it or something. By the way, one more thing about the cross. I don't know what shape the cross was in. Somebody brought that up. Dr. Hayes brought that up. I don't know if it was in an X or a T. My understanding is it was likely in a T shape. It's an accurate depiction of the cross, the one that, like, Catholics use, for example. Although it's probably a bad idea to have the method of torture that your Lord and Savior endured all over your house and on your neck and everything. If Jesus came back here and saw that shit, he'd have PTSD, like, instantly. But aside from that, I don't know, like, what shape it was. Probably a T. But either way, the nails were not driven through his hands. Hands will not support your body weight. It had to have been through his wrists at best. More than likely, he was strapped up there and they were through his arms and legs, both, I would say. I don't know, maybe a couple nails on each. I mean, who knows? But the hands won't support the body weight, so it wasn't that.
In early times was thought to be solid, a fortified place. Do you hear that? So the word they translated, so you're going to tell me Hebrew scholars translating the Bible from Hebrew and the Greek scholars translating it to make it, they just decided, no, we should pick a thin vapor or some kind of gas. No, they said something that's firm, that's solid.
Like, again, these words have very broad meanings, and they can be used in different contexts and mean something completely different in each of them. So him trying to take it and interpret it in a completely different language is just absurd on every level. But aside from that, Hebrew scholars, like the Jewish people who were translating this stuff, translated in their already existing beliefs into this. For example, they believed that you shouldn't speak the name of God. So everywhere that everywhere you found the Tetragrammaton, which is the 4 letters that represent God's name, every time they found the holy name written in the Bible, they replaced it with the word Adonai, meaning Lord. Every time you see the word Lord in capital letters in the Bible, it's probably replacing the Tetragrammaton, which is originally there. So Jews had this superstition about not speaking the holy name, and they translated that superstition in.
Again, this is what the scriptures teach. Now let's keep going because there's more. Here's the, it says strong, extended surface, expanse beat. Now just showing you that it's multiple lexicons. Now here's Job 37:18. Now this is going to show you, this may not be technically God speaking, but this is one of the wise men of the East that were Job's friends. And this is what they believed. This is showing you what he believed. He said to Job, "Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong and as a molten looking glass?" So what this proves, you can say, well, that wasn't God talking, but this is what they believed. And why did they believe it? Because they believed the Bible. They believed what God had already revealed to them. But let's keep going here.
Again, this is just like him translating in his already existing beliefs. Jehovah's Witnesses have done this in other areas, too. There's a section of this debate where this guy mentions the United Nations being the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns in the book of Daniel and Revelation, right? Jehovah's Witnesses believe that it's the United Nations, as well as him. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses wrote their own translation of the Bible, the New World Translation, and they translated in their already existing beliefs. The verse that's used to back that idea up, that the beast is the United Nations, the verse that's used to back that up basically says the beast will spring forth from the nations of the world. But that's not actually what the verse says. The verse doesn't say spring from. It says the beast will be part of, basically, which means, like, back in the day, empires were entirely too large to rule individually, so they would have kings for individual districts. That's what it was talking about. But Jehovah's Witnesses had this already existing idea that the United Nations was the thing that it was talking about. So they translated it to be springs forth from in Revelation, meaning the United Nations sprung forth from the other countries because it was part of them, because it is the other countries. I mean, you're seeing how, like, even one word can change everything, right? Or even a single word translated in a slightly different way can change the entire theology. That is what this guy is doing right now. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses do as well. I'm telling you, this guy is like a Jehovah's Witness in the way that he, like, comes up with his beliefs and theologies. He does it in the exact same way. Same way.
Now, the Hebrew word for spread out there is raka. Now, here's the definition of raka, and we're going to come back to this in a minute. The definition of raka means to pound the earth, or as a sign of passion, to expand by...
To pound as a sign of passion, you say. Go on. You've caught my attention.
Hammering, by implication, to overlay with sheets of metal, to make broad, to spread abroad into place, to stamp. Oh, somebody say stamp.
See, this is exactly what Greg Locke does. He's borrowing from Greg Locke's strategy.
Or like a seal pressed down. This is what a stamp is. He says that's what this word rock is. Now let's look at the ancient Josephus, the historian. Now, many believe that Josephus was also of a priestly line, that he was a priest and a Pharisee, so he was well acquainted with...
Many people believe... These are weasel words. Who believes that exactly? Josephus was actually a general in the Roman army, I think. Josephus, famed historian, I think he wrote the books called Antiquities or something. Anyway, he's a historian of the era, and he is our source for a lot of stuff about ancient Rome and things like that, and ancient Jewish culture. I believe he was also Jewish. He mentioned Jesus at one point, not in a favorable light. And by the way, the Pharisees were just kind of a sect of Judaism that existed all the way back then, that was of the belief that you don't need the temple to be Jewish. So Jews were like, they believed that it was super important to live right there in Jerusalem because Solomon's temple was there, and it had been there for like thousands of years, but the temple was being desecrated and had been torn down already and stuff like that. So they believed that, A, they didn't need the temple. They could do sacrifices anywhere, or they could, praise God or whatever anywhere, not just from the temple. And B, they believed that Moses, in addition to handing down the commandments, the original 613 words of the law, they also believed that Moses brought down from the from the mountain oral commandments that people were supposed to follow that were not supposed to be written down. And they refused to write these commandments down forever until after the temple was destroyed for the second time. And then they said, okay, we've got to preserve this for history. And the Pharisaical movement, the Pharisees, are modern-day Jews. The Pharisaical movement turned into, also known as Rabbinic Judaism, turned into what we have today as Jews. So Pharisees, when they say Pharisees, they're talking about modern-day Jews, basically.
What the Jews believed about creation. And this is what he said about the firmament. He said, And this is in book 1, entitled The Constitution of the World and the Disposition of the Elements.
Okay, he's talking about Josephus. Again, I don't trust a word out of this guy's mouth. He has a way of translating in the things that he already believes, so.
Josephus, born in the 1st century but crossed over into the 2nd century, he said, after this, on the 2nd day, God placed the heaven over the whole world, separated it from other parts, and he determined that it should stand by itself. So he's talking about the firmament here, that God placed it over the whole earth and that it stands by itself. In fact,
like at best, this just describes what people believed at the time. He wasn't like one of the top priests, one of the philosophers that determined what people believed within the religion or anything. And he wasn't in the Christian church either. So I don't know why this guy is talking about ancient Judaism when he's talking about what people believe. Why do we care? We're not talking about Judaism. We're talking about what Christians believed. Aren't you Christian? Why is this dude stuck on Judaism right now?
Architecture, an arch is the strongest structure that you can build. And it also must be strong because it supports a lot of water. And he says here that he placed this firmament, the crystalline, notice he says crystalline firmament, round it and together in agreement and agreeable to the earth, and fitted it for the giving of moisture and rain and for the affording advantages of dews. On the 4th day, he adorned the heaven with the sun, moon, and the stars, and appointed them their courses.
Again, to be very skeptical of whether or not this is even from any Josephus writings. I don't know. Or if that this is even what it really says. Scholars have found many inaccuracies and embellishments in Josephus' writings. Oh, and you know what else they've found? Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hayes. That's true. You know what else they found? People going back after the fact and putting words on the dude's lips that he never said that were beneficial to him. I think he mentioned Jesus a total of twice, but there are 5 writings by Josephus about Jesus. So people afterward lied and added this information, claiming that Josephus said this about Jesus when he simply did not. This is super, super common in the old, in antiquity. People did this all the time because they had an idea of what they believed and they wanted to propagate their ideas. They wanted to make everybody believe what they believed, basically.
The stars, sun, and the moon, but not the earth. You understand? This is what the Jews taught and believed. All right? Now let's keep going. Does the Bible say more about this? And then basically God made a terrarium. This is the longest lasting terrarium in the world. You put the right things in a terrarium, guess what? Things flourish. They live.
Wait, so is he saying that he got this from the Bible, that God made a terrarium? Is the word terrarium used anywhere in the Bible? Of course not. And neither is the concept for terrarium. None of it's used in the Bible. It's just absurd.
Forever. It's a beautiful structure that God made. Now let's go to this. We need confirmation. We'll go to the firmament. Is it crystal? What is it? So Ezekiel's talking about it.
I know. I'll tell you what it is. Not real. That's what.
Ezekiel chapter 1. And he says, the likeness of the firmament upon their heads of the living creatures was as the color. The King James used a color, but the definition of that word is the appearance of the terrible crystal stretched forth over their heads above. And there was a voice from the firmament that was over their heads, and when they stood and they had let down their wings, and above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness and appearance of a man above it. So Ezekiel, in his vision, he is seeing this firmament over their heads, and he said the appearance of it is like a terrible crystal. And he says, and I see the throne of God sitting upon it, and I see this image of a man upon it. So the Bible says God's throne sits upon this firmament that's solid, and it's like a sea of glass. I wonder where that's in the Bible.
I think it says sea of glass in the book of Revelation, but the book of Revelation was a book that was written for those people in that era, not intended to be applied to 2,000 something years later. and claiming otherwise is just absurd. So, anyways, completely ridiculous reading of this. And he's just he's just translating in his already existing beliefs. That's what he's doing right now. You know what? I think I have to go back to the wrecked ship to get some stuff. Maybe I didn't get all of this stuff. And I'm sorry, guys. I just have to pause this for a second because I'm getting my shit fucked over here. And I'm getting my shit fucked, guys. Please help. Oh my God, I am so... Oh boy. Okay, I beat him. Oh my God, 46 health left. Of course, I had 3 reserve tanks, I guess, but oh my God, I almost did not beat him there. Okay, we're good. How long has it been since I played this? Like forever. So, not too bad, I suppose.
We keep on. Revelation 4 says, after this, I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were a trumpet talking with me. He said, come up hither, and I will show thee the things which must be hereafter.
Oh, he's using the King James again, conveniently. Wasn't he using the AMP version earlier? He uses different translations at his will. Weird, huh? Translations that are convenient to him, but when they're not convenient, he pretends they're not in there.
And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat upon the throne, and he that sat upon the throne was to look upon like jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne in the sight of an emerald, and the throne, and before the throne there was a sea of crystal, a sea of glass like unto crystal. This is what the Bible said.
Yeah, that's true. It does say that. And okay, I talked about this last time, so I'm not going to get into it too deeply, but this is apocalyptic genre writing. This was written in a genre like fantasy or sci-fi or romance. Apocalyptic genre was a genre that doesn't exist anymore, really. It's commonly used to describe crazy, scary situations that were nonsensical. And every time there's conveniently somebody standing by to explain what it meant to the person who was conveying the apocalyptic vision. Again, this is not supposed to be prophetic. There's a difference between prophecy and apocalyptic writing. There are prophets in the Bible. They were not using apocalyptic writing to communicate their prophecies necessarily. So anyways, he's reading into the apocalyptic genre and reading it as though it's like giving us secret information that nobody else has, or whatever. Hey, there's my last D-tank. Nice.
That before the throne is like a sea of glass that's like crystal, and God's throne is seated upon it. And it's interesting, he says, that there is an emerald rainbow or light emanating from that, and I wonder what that might be.
Oh my God, the Northern Lights are God's throne. This is such a joke, dude. I mean, seriously, are we at the point yet where I can say that the Earth is God's footstool and Jupiter is his hairbrush? I feel like that's where we're at now. And he just tied a knot in a belief that these people didn't necessarily have up to this point. They're just realizing that, hey, the Northern Lights sparkle. The Bible says something sparkles. Maybe they're the same thing.
But of course, the scientists say that's electromagnetic radiation from the
That's correct, yes.
sun. Right. You know what I believe it is? The glory of God coming into the earth.
Okay, you can believe that if you want, I suppose, but the mechanism used for God's glory to come into the earth is electromagnetic radiation coming from the sun.
Shining through the crystalline dome that he sits upon. Revelation 15 also refers to the sea of glass at the throne of God. He says, I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, and for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire. Well, guess what? One of the ways you make glass is melting sand with fire.
Again, he's using nuanced language that doesn't actually imply what he's saying to translate in his already existing beliefs. This is just ridiculous, dude. And I forgot the Mickey Mouse room.
And he says, now listen to this. He said, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God in their hands. Folks, Benny Hinn the other day said heaven was a planet, another planet out there.
Oh my God, Benny Hinn is terrible. And also, he's friends with Greg Locke now. Benny Hinn isn't the only one that says that heaven is a planet. That's also claimed by what's his name? Oh my God, Jesse Duplantis. Yeah, Jesse Duplantis claimed that too. And the whole thing is absurd. Heaven is a planet, really? Jesus Christ, dude.
That is the biggest bunch of nonsense I ever heard in my life.
Coming from this guy, this is the biggest bunch of nonsense I've ever heard. This guy telling us about nonsense. Okay.
Right above us, God's throne sits upon it, and he looks at us like grasshoppers through his firmament dome.
He looks at us like grasshoppers through his firmament dome. So we are we're entertainment for God is really what he's communicating here, right? He's just like he created us for his entertainment, and he watches our miserable, painful, short lives go by, our fleeting lives disappear in front of his eyes, and doesn't do anything to help us. He's watching African children die of starvation. He's watching people suffer from a parasite that he apparently created in this firmament or whatever, this terrarium. He's watching people suffer from a parasite that burrows in your eye and eats its way out. And God is just like watching this happen and doing nothing to stop it. Wild beliefs, bro. Wild beliefs. Yeah, I have to go back around. I just realized that I missed the Mickey Mouse room.
This Amos 9:6, of course, the King James. I love my King James Bible, but sometimes
But he's going to pick another Bible to use that says a word that he likes more.
Did not translate words, pick the right words correctly. I know some people, I think that they were perfect translators. They were not. This in the Amplified, you actually have to look up every word in the Hebrew in this verse to even understand what it's talking about. But listen to this. This is Amplified version of 9:6. It is he, speaking of God, who builds his upper chambers in the heavens and has established his vaulted dome, the firmament of heaven, over the earth. He who calls the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth, the Lord is his name. So here's another scripture that gives you an idea of the firmament. Now, here we are. The Bible.
Wait, which one? Which book was that from? Amos 9:6. Amos was one of the minor prophets. There were 12 minor prophets who lived in Israel or in the area, Judea and stuff, for a while, and prophesied from God whether or not they would have a good growing season for their agriculture, or, whether or not they were pleasing God like a young boy should, or whatever. They prophesied things like that a lot. It did not relate to modern day, like what's happening right now. It had nothing to do with it. None of them did.
Here we are. The Bible teaches a circular, flat earth. The North Pole, magnetic center, the Antarctica, the ice walls. We've talked about that. The earth is stationary. Now, this is what the Bible says, with a molten dome over it. Now, let's keep going through the scriptures. Now, any way you go from there, south. We could talk about this all day long. They say there's not an ice wall, but there it is.
You're talking about Antarctica. It's not an ice wall. There's just a lot of ice there, okay? My God, dude. They will go to absolutely bizarre lengths to explain away their ridiculous nonsense, won't they? Jesus.
Antarctica is the ice wall boundary around the oceans. I've got a whole sermon. It's like 2 hours long on just Antarctica and the ends of the earth.
Well, guess what? Greg Locke said that he would pay for you to go with him to Antarctica. He's got the forms ready to go. All you got to do is sign on the dotted line, and boom, just like that, you have a free trip to Antarctica, which, by the way, is not cheap. Is he going to take it? Of course he's not. He burned this bridge before he left Greg Locke's church. By the end of this, he threw a microphone at Greg Locke's head. If Greg Locke was his opportunity to what's the word I'm looking for here? To validate his beliefs in a flat earth, go with it. Stay on his good side. Do whatever it takes to remain friends with Greg. Because if he can validate your beliefs, you're in good shape. I have to wonder if this guy burned a bridge with Greg because he didn't want his beliefs validated. At least partly. I know he intended to burn the bridge before he even showed up here today. I know that because he rented a room at the Marriott where he's going to hold church service, a competing service against Greg Locke's, the morning after the debate happened. And he tried to poach some of Greg Locke's people from that, from his church at the end of this debate. I know what's involved in setting up renting a space from a hotel. It's not cheap and it's not easy and it takes time. You have to work with an event coordinator and you have to put down tens of thousands of dollars. When I did Faithless Forum, you guys want to know how much it costs to rent that space? $27,000. Lucky for us, they let us pay them after the conference was over, because we did not have that kind of money to put into anything. So we had to meet a food and beverage minimum and a room block minimum. Basically, the people that came to the conference had to spend a minimum of $15,000 maybe on the bar, on food at the bar, and they had to charge it to their room too. They couldn't just pay for it. They had to charge it to their room. They had to rent a room in the hotel where the event was happening as well. And that all adds up to like your food and beverage minimum, basically, of $15,000. So it cost us, we had 150 people come, roughly. Greg Locke's church is made up of about, I suspect, 600 to 800 regular attendees, people that come every week, Wednesday and Sunday night. Or, I'm sorry, Wednesday night and Sunday morning, actually. So this guy had to have rented a space at least as big as the one that I rented. And it probably cost him, I know he only stayed for one night, or not even that. He stayed for like, a few hours, right? Renting the auditorium for a few hours, or even a day, maybe the minimum you can do is a day, probably cost him $15,000. $15,000 maybe. What a monetary and logistics nightmare. Don't get me started. It was a nightmare. I literally had nightmares about it because, like, owning my own business, I have to pay my taxes directly. It doesn't come out of my paycheck like a lot of people. So I get paid from, like, YouTube and Patreon and stuff, and I have to pay not only personal taxes, but business taxes too. I have to calculate all of that out. I work with an accountant for that and everything, but it's expensive. It's more than just personal because I have to pay for business as well. I mean, business isn't that much, but it adds up, especially when I'm filing like 16 different returns. I have to file 2 state returns and 1 federal return for business and for personal. So I'm filing 6 returns basically. And I'm paying a lot of money. So I basically take like 35-40% of my income or something like that, or even 50%, put it away in a bank account, and at the end of the year or whatever, I pay it all in one lump sum once it's all calculated out. So I had $20,000 that I had to pay to the IRS, and I was even short for that. I had to pay like an additional like $5,000 to them or something. And this is back when Faithless Forum was happening. And I was financially responsible for Faithless Forum. I had to take that money, all $20,000 that I owed to the IRS, and pay for that shit. And now I owe the IRS that money, you know? Of course, I didn't end up having to pay for it because the food and beverage minimum was met. So we only owed a few thousand in the end, and we made that up with ticket sales. So we zeroed out, basically. We were exactly even. Nobody made any money except for the hotel, pretty much. But that's, that's fine. We wanted to hold the event because it was fun. We like doing that stuff. But I literally had nightmares, literal nightmares, because I thought I was going to have to pay like 20 grand or something of money that I did not have. It's like, that's not mine to spend, Jesus, dude. It was so scary. Literal nightmares from Faithless Forum, but it went off without a hitch. It went really, really well, and I was so glad to see all the fans and hang out with people and everything. It was just fantastic. All of it. It was just amazing. Do I want to plan another event like that? Absolutely not. No. I gave my rights to the company that is Faithless Forum over to Thomas Westbrook of Holy Kool-Aid. I'm done. I told him I'd give him the rights to the website. I would transfer the domain name to him, faithlessforum.com, but God, dude, I don't feel like going through all of that shit. Like, you know how much of a pain in the ass it is to do a domain name transfer? Oh, God, I used to do that for a job, and it was miserable. When he pushes me hard enough, I'll transfer the stupid name to him. I just don't feel like it. Anyways. All right, let's keep listening.
There it is, Job 26:10. He's compassed the waters with bounds until night and day come to an end. He has inscribed a circular limit, right? It's not on the face of the waters. I mean, you just keep going. He has fixed a circle on the surface of the waters.
This is fascinating. He's, this is the Bible verses that he's using. Job 26:10, these are all Job 26:10. He fixed a circle on the surface of the water, defining the boundary between light and dark. And somehow they get flat earth from that. How did they arrive at flat earth from that? If you look at this, here are like 200 verses that prove a flat earth in these people's minds. And this image has been posted around social media all over the place, particularly on like Greg Locke's church members' Facebook pages and stuff. So we've got earth measured with a line, not a curve. Job 38:4-5. Really. That's the level we're at. Earth has ends. Deuteronomy. This is assuming no metaphors exist in the Bible. To the ends of the earth. Waters have a face, a geometrical flat surface. Genesis 1:2, 7:18, and Job 38:3. I mean, that's where we're at now. That is the level that we're operating at. Everyone sees Jesus in the end times. Revelation 1:7. Couldn't possibly mean that technology will be good enough that everyone can see him on their screens. New Jerusalem, the huge cube. Oh yeah, that's a whole thing I don't want to get into. The firmament and the dome. I mean, seriously. This is like bottom of the barrel ridiculous. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with BS. That always works. That's a good saying. I haven't heard that before. Anyway, that's Dean Odell. That is Greg Locke. That is, at least this part of their debate, absolutely insane. Tell me what you think about it in the comments.